Does Riot still dislike the idea of dual scalings, or do we have a chance to see Gunblade back at some point? I mean, I'd say never. Like, maybe we could see it back. I think one of the difficulties with Gunblade was it kind of it had this issue of we were deliberately not making hybrid characters because Gunblade existed, and it just was kind of silly. I think the reason it was silly though is probably because the active was overtuned. Gunblade's active is you basically clicked on someone and slowed them. It was a targeted, powerful slow. And the reason that's really crazy on a character like Katarina is Katarina, you know, look what Katarina can do with a targeted, powerful slow. Jump on you, slow you, make it so you can't accept the ultimate, things like that. Imagine Mordekaiser using that on you, Evelyn using that on you, Kale using that on you, right? And so we got to this point where Gunblade, like, just had a problematic pattern it created for a number of characters. It was less that it was hybrid and more just the pattern itself. And so we ended up removing it. Now that said, I think potentially come back. Like, I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying, like, you know, never say never, right? Like, every time we like think about items, sometimes we ask questions about, like, you know, should item A or item B come back? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, right? Like, another item that I've thought about is, like, did we really need to remove it? Was Gale Force. I really like Gale Force. I think it was pretty sweet. There's some problems with it in terms of, like, you know, if it's not a mythic item, like, what are the trade-offs to buying it, things like that, but, you know, cool item. But, you know, so whenever we're thinking about items, sometimes we think about older items. Doesn't mean any given item is gone forever. But yeah, Gunblade did have some, like, pattern problems that created some very real issues with it. The other part of this question, though, is about hybrid champs. It's kind of like what's up with dual scalings, and why don't you have items that do dual scalings much anymore? You have Ginsu's Rageblade, and that's really about it. One of the problems with a lot of dual scaling characters, not all of them, but a lot of them, is that dual scaling doesn't represent an interesting split or nature to the character. It just represents being strong with, like, OP items like Gunblade, and represents a math problem. So I think a character who's a prime example of this is actually Katarina. Katarina has dual scalings, but I would argue that they don't tend to work out all that well in terms of, like, when you're playing Katarina, you're not really looking at, like, AD or AP and being like, which one of these, this does this and this does that, and which one do I want in which situation? And you're more just being like, which one gives me literally the most damage? Which one is the best math? And then you do that one, right? Now, Katarina has had some, like, dual scaling, like, different builds in the past, but, like, it's just a thing where it's like, I'd argue that a character like Kat wouldn't necessarily be buying Gunblade. It would still feel good on her, but she wouldn't be buying Gunblade because she's like, I need the AD for this and the AP for that. She'd be buying it because, like, oh, these stats together just give me the most ult damage, right? And so I think that's a challenge with dual scaling design that, like, I think we would need to, like, really think about is when we have a dual scaling character like Katarina or Jax or Kai'Sa. I think Kai'Sa does this pretty well, by the way. The question is just, how do you get those scalings to express themselves in interesting ways without just becoming math problems? Kai'Sa, I think, as a character, does it pretty well. It's like, hey, you know, your W destroys people if you have AP on this character, and you've got a big auto attack damage execute, but then, of course, like, your autos and your Q do tons of damage with AD. So, like, I think Kai'Sa is actually a really great example of a hybrid character. Because she likes both AP and AD in the same build, but her overall thing that she's doing tends to be slightly different depending on which one she's building. Of course, it still is somewhat of a math problem with Kai'Sa, but, like, her Q is a lot better if you build AD, and her W is a lot better if you build AP, things like that. So I'd say Kai'Sa was pretty well executed there in the long run. 80 carry mains. I don't want to play a mage. There are games where mage bot is better, and if they get what they want, it means marksman bot will be playable in games where they shouldn't be picked and broken in games where they're good. Do you think top lane mains wanted to play Ornn or Malphite for so many years? Why do 80 carry mains get special treatment? Seems counterintuitive considering 4 other guys. Okay, so the person is basically asking is, like, you know, why don't you let mages be good in bot lane? So for starters, we do let mages be good in bot lane to some degree, right? Like, in any given meta, there's going to be a lot of mages who, like, if you actually picked them, they're, like, quite powerful down there, right? So, like, if you go to bot right now and you look at, like, some of the highest win rate characters in bot lane, a number of them are mages, right? Like, there's Veigar, there's Swain, there's Karthus, there's Hui, right? Like, there's a number of mages that if you were to pick them bot lane and go bot lane AP carry, like, you're gonna do fine. Like, you're gonna do fine. They're very unpopular. People don't tend to play them there, but, like, mages, I'd argue, have been for a while and are viable bot lane. And we don't have a goal to, like, delete mages from bot lane. I want to make that clear as well. Like, when we nerf mages for bot, we nerf them generally because we believe, you know, they might be kind of overpowered. But there's no goal to be like, we never want to see a mage bot lane again. Like, that's not a goal. That said, one thing you do have to account for when, like, thinking about a role or set of players is, like, what their preference is, right? So, like, as an example, it just turns out that through funneling, years and years of funneling, basically, almost everybody who goes bot lane is someone who wants to play an AD carry. Which basically means that even if a mage is viable down there, most bot laners wouldn't necessarily choose to pick it even if it was powerful. Because they're just like, they're not queuing bot to play an AD carry. And I know like the comment was like, well, I'm not queuing top to play Malphite. And I guess, sorry, they're not queuing bot to play a mage. They're queuing bot to play an AD carry. And I guess the comment would be like, mentioned, well, I'm not queuing top to play Malphite. And it's like, well, you don't necessarily have to play Malphite when you go top lane. Now, are there metas where Malphite is powerful? Yes. Are there metas where Ornn or tanks are powerful? But I would argue for the vast majority of players, just because it's a like a tankier meta doesn't mean you can't play many of the other classes in top lane at the same time, right? And I think that's an important thing to note, is that, you know, there's like, we could talk about like matter of degrees in terms of character power. It's like sometimes people will come in here and be like, Veigar is the most Ziggs. Ziggs is the most powerful character in bot lane. I have to play Ziggs every game. And I don't want to play Ziggs. What are you gonna do? And I'm like, well, you don't have to play Ziggs every game. You don't have to play the most powerful character in the lane every game. Now, are there metas where like AD carries are like literally non-viable compared to mages? Yes, there have been metas like that, right? There have been metas where it's like, actually just don't play AD carries. They feel so weak and so bad, you should be playing mages, and then of course people would still play AD carries. Like that can happen, and that's not ideal. Similarly, like there could be a meta in top lane where it's like, if you ever pick a skirmisher, like you're just trolling, or if you ever pick a tank, you're just trolling. But I would argue a lot of times it's like, what the actual meta is something like, hey, there's a class that's favored and there's a class that's disfavored, but both classes are still functional and feel functional and powerful. And like, it's not as important that like you have to pick the strongest thing every time. If you're a player who is compelled to pick the strongest thing every time, might I suggest playing Taric support? But like, you know, people play what they want to play, and so I think what's more important is that the characters that you play feel viable and useful, even if they're not the strongest thing you could be playing, right? And so I'm okay in a world where, you know, AD carries and mages share the bot lane, and sometimes AD carries are a bit stronger and sometimes mages are a bit stronger. I think that's fine. I think it's less fine if it's a world where it's just like, oh, if you ever pick an AD carry, you just are non-functional compared to picking a mage. Like that's a whole different story. But